Hello and welcome to episode 143 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Joining me on today's episode is the director Tharun Mohan. We get to sit and talk all about his brand new film Dorcha, or as it's now called, The Darkness. It's an absolute brilliant horror, a British made film with so much heart and soul, and people are raving about it. So I'm absolutely thrilled that he's joining me on today's episode to talk all about the process of making this film and everything that's led up to this day. But in true typical Mark and Me fashion, I do like to touch base and talk about my previous episode. On the last episode, I was joined by the director Yavor Petkov. We got to sit down and talk all about the writing and the directing process of the brand new film Danny Legend God. It was a great interview and the response has been fantastic. It's been full on lately at Mark and Me, and there's been so many interviews coming through, and in this week just alone we've had 4 directors, and it's not going to stop anytime soon. I'm so excited by all these incredible interviews, and especially the up and comers that have got a whole career ahead of them. Seeing how they delve into the industry and make a name for themselves is something that I find fascinating, and that doesn't change today. You're going to absolutely love the interview with Tharun, and he's brilliant from start to finish. So I think the best thing to do right now is to go straight to the interview. So here's me and Tharun talking all things film. Tharun, thank you for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
What I wanted to do today, there'll be a few people that are tuning in that will discover you as a director who haven't seen your previous shorts or your most recent film. But for those people that are tuning in, what I want to do is kind of take those listeners right back to the beginning of your career.
Right. Okay.
So when you were growing up, what were those early films or maybe actors or performances that you can remember first made you fall in love with film?
I mean, I've always been a fan of horror films. I've always been. I think it's probably thanks to my dad, because probably he didn't realize that some of those films that he let me watch was a bit too, over the age that I was supposed to be, watching. So I think one of the first horror film that I ever watched was The Nightmare on Elm Street.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that was also VHS, like an actual video cassette. That's how I found it. And I asked my dad if I could watch it. He said it's fine. He could watch it. It was actually a very scary movie. Yeah. And I remember I couldn't sleep for nights. So obviously it's not great parenting, but it worked very well for me. And he always let me watch horror films, but he obviously knew what I could watch and what I shouldn't watch. Nothing too graphic of that nature, but so we used to watch it together as well. So when I used to get scared, I used to hide under the blanket. If it's too scary, so, okay, now it's fine, the ghost is gone, now you can come out. So that's how we used to do it. So I think Nightmare on Elm Street and perhaps The Exorcist, nice. Those were the 2 films that actually made me want to explore the areas of horror. Nice. But coming into filmmaking, it took me a while, because I did have a job in IT. That's what I used to do for a very long time. And during the time in IT, or working in IT, for instance, I always wrote little scripts, and that's how I ended up doing my first short film, which is basically The Baby. Yeah. It's about this little zombie baby that it's like a parasite that lives inside a woman's womb. Yeah. So it's like a disguise. So they're like partner up. This woman pretending to be pregnant, walking around, asking for help. They find innocent people, and then the baby comes out and it eats, the person, and it goes back in.
Amazing.
Yeah. So that was my first short film. Obviously zero budget, with a couple of people, and we did it pretty well. And it looks cheesy. It's basically a doll. You can see it's a doll straight away, but it was fun.
That's obviously your first debut short, but yeah. Where did the ideas come about and the actual idea? I know you said there was no funding, but there's one thing sitting there with a pen and brainstorming and coming up with this idea for The Baby, and it sounds like a great concept, but when did it actually become reality that you could get some people involved and get some cameras and some equipment and learn the art of basically putting a film together and directing a short? Because there's a big difference, isn't there, from the planning stage to the execution?
Absolutely. I think that slowly built up. So what I realized when I did my first short film is I needed more experience. And then I started working on other people's projects, and mostly for free, like production assistant. And so literally that was my actual film school. Even though I came from a media school, it didn't quite prepare me to be a filmmaker. And then gradually I ended up working in about 6 or 7 or 8 different films and short films as production assistant. And gradually through this journey, I kind of met people.
Yeah.
Especially, I met cinematographers, I met good gaffers, I met other fellow filmmakers who've also had a passion of making films. So gradually, I teamed up with other people. So my first feature that I worked on from the very beginning to the end, it was something called Chasing Shadows. It's
Yeah.
a thriller. It's basically a neo-noir thriller by a filmmaker, Khan. So I met him in the London Screenwriters Festival, and that's when we had this good conversation. He said, "I've got the script. You want to have a read, and I'm just looking to get some fundings together, and if it works out, then we can make this movie." And then gradually, that's what we did. We partnered up. I was more of like the producer's role,
Yeah.
and then obviously he wrote it and directed it. So that was my first feature film, and that's how I met the cinematographer Ariel Arthur. So
Yeah.
he did the cinematography. He was the DOP for Chasing Shadows. So then I met Ariel. Then I met his gaffer Simon, and then I met a few other people who ended up becoming the crew for The Darkness,
Yeah.
which was originally titled Dorcha. So even getting the funding was very difficult because literally it's not funded by any funding bodies, but it was funded by my friends, and also I chipped in a lot of our savings. A lot of money from here and there came in together to form the budget for Dorcha. What I originally wrote it for was a slightly bigger budget, and then once we secured the budget, we realized it's only 20% of what I originally intended. Then we had to literally rewrite. Well, I had to rewrite basically to fit into the budget. So one of the biggest, probably the biggest, toughest decision was when I originally wrote the Darkness. It was 80% period and 20% happens in 2000. And then when I had to change the budget, I had to split it between half and half. So most of the films takes place in the present, and only a small portion of that happens in the early 19th century.
When you did these shorts, we talked about The Baby, and then you did Purgatory, State of Mind,
Yeah.
and then short. So those are obviously ambitious, but not on the scale of a full feature-length film. The hell of a jump, isn't there, from going from a short to this big first feature length? Now, with The Darkness, which we're here to talk about today, how did you find that actual big jump? You've obviously got a bigger budget. I know it's not the budget you really wanted, but it's still a budget. You've got different people, you've got a team around you, you've got everything on a bigger scale. Did you find it quite intimidating, or were you just kind of inspired by the kind of challenge that was ahead?
Well, intimidating, I guess I didn't really get time to be intimidated.
No.
So it was a constant battle, there was always something doesn't work. There was always a plan B. I suppose that's what made the journey so pleasurable, because we always worked on plan B.
Yeah.
There always something happened with plan A. Yes, it was almost as if we planned for a plan A, but plan A never existed. So might as well work on plan B. So I think that really helped. But just coming back to your original question, in terms of the scale, yeah, it was much bigger in terms of the crew, the number of people I was responsible for, and the number of people who may be technically or artistically involved in the project. And as a director, or even I was also like the producer, and the other producer was obviously my missus, and then there was On involved as well, which I met on the previous film. So for all these people, I was in a way responsible, because it's my idea that they believed in, and they said, okay, we really think we can do this. But then gradually, as the closer and closer we got to the date, probably I was a lot under stress.
Yeah.
And there was also some last minute casting changes that happened because of people's availability. And to be more precise, one of the actors had to drop out a day before the filming.
Oh my God.
2 days before the filming. Sorry, 2 days before the filming, one of the actors had to drop out, and that was the lead. So that was literally I had to speak to the AD, Kate. She's amazing, a great AD, and literally we had to change the call sheet so that we only have Amelia for the first day.
Right.
So Amelia was the only actress for day one, because we literally lost an actor. So we literally pushed everything into the day one. So she was the only person we shot for the whole day. And from day two, we bought in the option number two actor, and obviously we had to unfortunately tell him you didn't get the part. And then the night before, I called him and said, you actually got the part, because the other person had to drop out. He was more than excited. Cyril, an amazing guy. So we literally didn't have any rehearsals because we already had rehearsal with Amelia and the other actor. So he'd never met Amelia, never even read any lines with her, nothing. He just literally came in blank slate, day 2, and we started filming with him. So these kind of things that it was very stressful. But then it's one of those things we can't just pull it. We can't just pull the plug and say, "Oh, wait a second, we have to cancel everything." You simply can't do it. Yes, it's a lead. Well, one of the main actors, but you just have to do it. Worst comes to worst, I would have to act. I don't know. So somehow we just have to get that moving. So that was one of the constant battles we had. Whereas for short films, because it's only a day filming or maybe maximum 3 days filming, because Baby was done in 2 nights,
Yeah.
and Purgatory State was done in 3 days, but different.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a hectic call sheet or anything like that. So we had plenty of time, and we can always cancel, and then something maybe the location didn't work out. We can just email everybody and tell them we have to push it for another day. Everyone's fine. But with the feature, we got so many people, they've already blocked their dates for you, and then you can't just keep changing that around. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges we had. So we had to make sure we don't forget nothing. So planning. So when we get to the day, we have everything, whatever we need.
Sounds like you were kept on your toes at all times.
Oh my God, yeah. And even we had to do everything to bring the cost down as well. So after filming, I used to drive back, with the AD. I used to drop her back at her home, and then we used to drive the actor to close enough to where I used to live, and then we used to drive back home. So every day, the drive itself would be in like 4 hours, and then the filming is we have a proper 11, 12 hour call sheet as well. So every single day was probably like an 18-hour day for me. So during filming, it was really hectic. I lost a lot of weight, which is good, which is always a good thing.
If you want to lose weight, don't worry about these like healthy eating or gym. Just make a film.
Yeah, to be precise, yeah, that works like a miracle. Like 2 weeks, you'll be trim and fit.
Now that the film's obviously finished, at what point could you switch off and know that the final product was done? Because I've asked this to a few directors actually, and I find it quite fascinating that when you're so creative and you're so passionate about something like a podcast or a film or an album, at what point do you know it's enough to know it's complete? Because you could keep going, you could keep polishing, you could make scenes look better, you could spend longer with a cinematographer. At what point can you switch off and know that it's complete?
That's a very tough question. I'll tell you why, because probably I don't think so. If I could have kept going.
Yeah.
With Dorcha, I think I could have kept going. I kept thinking, okay, maybe, if I had enough time, I could do a pickup shoot, maybe like add a little extra. I could perhaps add a little insert if I wanted to. So I think the point that I decided was I gave myself a deadline. I gave myself a deadline to have a timeline for the feature, because it was edited by Tajana. She was a great editor. But before that, I put a timeline together. So at least I know, this is the flow of the story. This is what it's going to be happening, a rough timeline for the feature. So while doing the timeline, there were certain gaps in certain areas, which I knew, we could have added a little extra here and there. But I think I just have to make that conscious decision where, if I keep doing that, I'm just gonna go forever. All I did was I went back to the script, just reading through the script, and then looking at the footages that we have on the timeline. How true is that? Is my work about 80% or 90% true to what I have on the timeline? And I came to a conclusion that whatever I had in the timeline was almost about 85% true to what was on the script. Then I said, yeah, that's it. That's your film. That's your film right there. So it was just a case of getting the VFX, and then of course the editor to do their magic and make it all cool and nice. And then of course once I gave it to the editor, she also found some great scenes and footages that I probably didn't use it.
Yeah.
Maybe there were some scenes where I cut too early and things like that. And she did all that. And once we had that, there was no turning back. Literally, there was nothing we corrected. Although we did one pickup, which was added after the filming. So literally, we did the original 4 weeks of filming, and then I had a break for I didn't even look at the footages for another 3 weeks. I just didn't want to. And then during that 3 weeks, I thought there's a little scene that I could add. It was nothing. It was something missing between Brian and Neve, which is basically the two characters who live in the early 19th century. So there was something missing between them, and some connection, at least some conversation. and that's where we ended up filming scene. If you've seen it, it's basically the conversation she has after the night she goes sleepwalking. So it's basically that. So
Okay.
that we shot later. That was the only thing, but that we shot even before looking at the timeline, just because I thought, okay, there was something else we need, a little extra we need, and we shot that in one day. So yeah, probably the only other thing we must have revisited is probably the VFX scenes here and there,
Yeah.
because that was a bit of a trial and error. Some of the stuffs that I originally intended obviously didn't work for the budget, so we had to work our way around. Eyes, the changing of the eyes. Basically, I did it myself or watching YouTube tutorials. So and some of the other bits, it was done by other guy called Guy Pearson. He's pretty good as well. So yeah, all of that turned out pretty well. I'm very happy with
Yeah.
the film
I
turned
mean,
out.
it's all a learning experience, isn't it? Everything that you
Yeah.
go through, and to do this and have it out there and finished and done, you must have learned so much by just basically getting on and doing it and finding out what works and doesn't work. But now it's done, it's wrapped, it's finished. You must be now really ambitious to get onto the next project and kind of correct the issues that you had on the first go and learn from it and build on it and kind of try new different methods and stuff. So where are you at now? Have you got some ideas? Are you writing? Are you kind of in talks with people? Are you already at the kind of process to start another film?
Yes, I am. Yeah, because well, I wouldn't say it's way too early. There was one project that I was supposed to be doing in India. That was pre-corona, pre-pandemic. So that was in talks, and that actually did get past the stage where the studio almost said yes, but unfortunately, and then the pandemic happened. So I don't see that coming back at any point, mainly because India generally they depend on theaters, the box office, not so much in the streaming, revenue, for instance. So that's basically a big setback for Indian films. So it'll take a while. So I don't know if that's going to happen, but there was two other projects that I really wanted to do. One was coming back to the Baby short film, which I originally did. I actually wrote Treatment a while ago, even before The Darkness, and that was something I was actually quite interested to make that into feature. So that's back in the drawing room, and then I've probably halfway through the script. So I've got an idea what the story is, which way it's going. So I'm just gonna. My idea is in the next probably 2 months' time, giving myself enough time to finish off that script. And but there are potentially a couple of producers that I could potentially attach into the project, and then I'm gonna start, approaching actors, and then getting them on board, and probably that's going to help me with the funding of the film. So that's one of the features, and there is also another film, even though it's not horror. I'm just loosely involved in it as one of the co-producers. Is this Italian guy who's working on this really cool, sarcastic black comedy, so to speak. It's like a feel-good film. I
Oh,
really like it's nothing to do with horror at all. It's just a
no.
comedy, but it's nice. It's a lovely feel-good film. So I'm involved in that. So I'm working on that as well.
It's an exciting time for horror. I always think it can't get any bigger, but it seems over the last 5 years that it's really become the mainstream. When you think of the films coming out in the cinema over the next few months, everyone's talking about A Quiet Place 2 and the next Halloween
Yeah.
film with John Carpenter on board producing and all this sort of thing. And it's a really good time to, I think, be involved in making horror because there's conventions, the even just the stuff they sell in horror now is the biggest thing. If I go on the Instagram, everyone's got memorabilia and merchandise, and I think it's a really good time for horror again. It kind of faded away in the 90s a bit, and it seems to be back better than ever. So it must be a great time for you to be such a big fan of horror to be involved in making even more.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. I honestly, I'm a big fan of. It's funny you said the 90s. Yeah, I think you're right. 90s probably was the worst time for horror, except for maybe the Scream, maybe. It
Yeah,
was,
that was great, but it
yeah,
just seemed that there was just so many sort of like American Pie and all these sort of films. There
yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
really the good. There was a few odd films like
yeah.
The Faculty and stuff and Scream, but there was a lot of.
Hmm.
It's now the point where most weeks there's a brand new horror coming out, which is
Yeah.
amazing.
And also the best thing now is you have a lot of horror, which is kind of like experimental. You
Yeah,
have a very nostalgic kind of horror coming out, like the It. At the same time, you have, the It Follows, for instance.
yeah, amazing.
I think it's the best time you can make a lot of experimental horror. So that's what I'm gonna try and cash in on because I really want to make something which is quite old school. At the same time, I'm not a big fan of jump scare, like horror for the sake of horror. So I rather want to work on something which is kind of slow paced, but it kind of builds on you. And then kind of it's whether it needs to be a TV series, I don't know, or just a horror film which is slightly longer than 2 hours. It might be a bit too much, but I really like the idea of writing something which kind of builds and builds and builds on a psychological kind of scale,
Yeah.
but more sort of a haunting thriller where there's a little bit of an investigative element involved in it. So it won't be just like possession or something just taking you over and then killing you, or revenge, for instance. I need
Yeah.
something which is psychological at the same time, needs to have a bit of a moral at the end of so when you leave the cinemas or when you finish watching the film, you'll be like, okay, there is some meaning to it. You know, doesn't really have to be a positive message, as far as there is some message, and then it's kind of makes you want to think, and as far as you can sleep some nights over it, that'll be my work done. So that's the plan. So this time I'm actually going to spend more time in the writing
Yeah.
rather than rushing into it. So I really want to get inspired, and probably that's something that I lacked for a while, until maybe after the darkness. I actually stopped watching a lot of movies. So I just want to get back into it. So I'm making a whole list of horror films, especially the ones I've already seen, which I really want to see again, watch again.
Yeah.
Old school, anything from the 80s, the 90s, even early 2000, like films like The Orphanage, for instance.
Yeah.
The Spanish movie.
Yeah.
That's really good, really, really good. I don't know what's the duration of the film, but when the first time when I watched it, I just thought it was actually pretty long. It wasn't just like a 90-minute movie. I think probably it was close to 2 hours, I think. And there
Yeah.
was enough stuffs in there to really make you think. Such a beautiful story.
It's
And
amazing.
same with some of Mike Flanagan's The Haunting
Yeah.
series, The Haunting of Bly Manor and The Haunting of Hill House, things like that, where it takes you to places and then makes you think and makes you hate and makes you cry and makes you love, have that mixed feeling and emotions. That'd be nice.
It's definitely a good time to kind of get back in and watch as much as you can, especially with
Yeah.
lockdown and times when we've got more time than we've ever had. I think with streaming services like Shudder and Arrow Film and stuff as well, and all these companies pushing horror out there every week, there's a new film, and it's not always big directors. There's a lot of up and coming directors as well that are getting a platform to show that their work is strong, and it's an amazing time. It's all these independent filmmakers that I know are getting their work seen.
Yeah, that is true. It's I don't think it's the best time. I guess the pandemic obviously is a very bad thing, but
Yeah.
what kind of helped is it really pushed the streaming into people's hands. It was very heavily used in the Western countries, in Europe,
Yeah.
but not so much in Asia, and not so much in Africa. So with the pandemic, what has kind of helped is it really helped the OTT platform extend its reach. So a lot of people, when I remember even before the pandemic, when I used to talk about Netflix and Amazon Prime, a lot of my friends in India, they're like, okay, yeah, we know, okay. But they don't really heavily depend on it. They said like they know it existed, they probably used it, and that's about it. But now the amount of people who actually use it and the amount of OTT movies that's been released straight into OTT, it's a lot more than
Yeah.
ever. So that really helps. And now people are watching different languages. They don't care about, worried about subtitles, looking at subtitles anymore. There was a time when, oh, it's a movie with a subtitle, I don't really want to watch it. But it's not that case. Even European audience, for instance, who probably didn't really like watching movies with subtitles, they just watch everything they get now, because of the quality of the content is good. Plus, you don't really have to be, like you said, like a famous filmmaker or someone up and coming and new. As far as your subject has got some good stuffs in it, a good trailer and a good synopsis, it's up to them to watch it. Some people might just watch it for 10
Yeah.
minutes and leave it, but still, it extends the reach far beyond. You don't look for names anymore. You can just look for the content and what it looks like, and you can decide whether you want to click play and watch it or not. So it's definitely a great time.
There's a lot of people that listen to the Mark and Me podcast that are at film school or aren't at film school and are studying and self-teaching themselves stuff like Adobe and different types of editing software and stuff. Now, what advice do you give to people that are like yourself, that are wanting to get into the industry, that are making films, that are very passionate about film, to try and stand above everyone else and get seen? Because anybody right now with a phone can make a small film and put it onto Instagram or Facebook or YouTube. But what advice do you give to people to try and go that extra mile, or to be seen, or to be in the right place to get their work out there?
I think the best thing to do is pick a technology you like and make the whole thing in it. Like, for instance, if you said phone, now there's a lot of film festivals which are only accepting movies made on phone, for instance. So a lot of different avenues. Some could be funded by Apple, for instance. But so my advice would be, make something as short as possible. It doesn't have to be lengthy. Some people think if it's a short film, it has to be like 5 minutes long. Not really. Make something as short as possible, but in that short span of time, make it to the best quality possible. So that means if you make something, a short film which is like a minute long, if you have a beginning and a middle and an end within that minute, if you can write something for it, then your whole focus is on getting that act completed the best possible way, just for that 1 minute.
Yeah.
So that now gives you opportunity to have perhaps you don't really need a great deal of technology nowadays. The key thing is lighting. Never skim on lighting.
No.
You might think, oh, it's just lights. Not really. No. If you don't have lights, if you don't have good lights, if you don't have somebody who understands lighting, it's going to look flat. It's going to look terrible.
Yeah.
The second thing is art. Even though many people, when we write, we don't think about art at all. It is okay. It's in a room. You can shoot this in a room. You can shoot in my room, but with this plain white walls, it's just going to look boring.
Yeah.
So art and lighting, these are the two most underrated things when it comes to filmmaking. Whereas you can actually, like you said, with good lighting, you can actually use an iPhone, or any phone, and then the quality is going to look amazing. Of course, then be careful when if you write something for the dark. If you're going to write something, if you're going to shoot outdoors, then it's very tricky.
Yeah.
And then you can perhaps, do something like a found footage, for instance. Then you can get away with it.
Yeah.
Something like that. So my advice would be write something which is really short, which is basically a runtime of 30 seconds to a minute. So you're not really complicating things, and put in ideas, bring in people with their own kit, which always helps. The number of cinematographers you're going to meet, even experienced ones. If your idea is good enough, they might just work for, just for you. They might just work for experience, not really experience. They might just work for the fun of it. If your idea is really good,
Yeah.
the amount of people you actually meet, you will say, you know what, I actually like that. I got a couple of days off. Maybe I can do this for you.
Amazing.
So yeah, go to events. There's a lot of meetups that happens now. Of course, because of pandemic, it's mostly on Zoom.
Yeah.
But otherwise, there's a lot of events that happens every now and then, every day, every week. You have something on Facebook saying filmmakers group, photographers group, cinematographers group. So go there, find your people. If you don't have a buddy already, you good at the camera, then find one, and then just invest in that little script that you want to write, and then focus on it and plan it well in advance. Give yourself a month, 2 months, 3 months to plan. And when the day comes, you'll see all that planning would come into places, and it's going to look amazing.
That's some amazing advice. And even me, who am not a filmmaker, I'm now inspired. I'm like, I'm going to go outside and make a film. But
I'm glad.
And the one thing I do on this podcast that's very different is the outro music that's on the podcast is chosen by the guest. Now, we make this a bit different by putting you on the spot, and I understand it's not easy, but it can be any song, any band, any piece of music from a film, a score, an artist, or just a song you love from an album. But if I give you too long to think about it, you will get the list down to 10 and to 5 and struggle. But when I ask you the question, what's the first song that comes to your head that you think is a perfect representation of you, your love, your heart, your soul, and is the song choice that you think would be perfect to then end this interview?
Well, yeah, strangely enough, soon as you said that, the first song that came to my head was the song called In Your Eyes by Peter Gabriel.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think it's probably mainly because of that scene that came into my head where John Cusack was holding the boombox over his head.
Yeah,
To
in Say Anything.
pieces. It's Say Anything, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's a song that came to mind. It's very cheesy, very romantic, but there you go.
Hell of a tune. I want to thank you for your time and coming on the podcast today. Genuinely, it's been inspirational. I love listening to people that are passionate. I love people that are going to go places, and I can't wait to see where your career's gone. To see the darkness is so good, and it's so brave and ambitious for a debut, and it's incredible. So I'm really, really excited to see where you go next. And I just want to thank you for your time, and you coming on here today has been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you, Mark, and it's been a pleasure. Especially, I know what you do in your podcast, so to be on the podcast is an honor, and to talk to actual people listening to it, that's amazing. That's my work done well there.
Amazing. I can't wait for
Wow.
your journey and where it takes you, and in a couple of years come back on and talk about the next project.
Oh my God, I can't wait again. That's my next challenge now. I've got a milestone now. I want to come back to your show again with another feature film to talk about. Have a good one, and love what you're doing.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and Tharun, an incredible writer, a fantastic director, and so down to earth, so positive throughout, and I think he gave some advice there that is some of the best that I've had in over 140 episodes. I love the way he talked about how he created these small films from nothing when he was growing up, how he's then took that upon himself to develop and then become a feature writer, producer, director, and now release his brand new film, The Darkness. It's an incredible journey that he's been on, but just the start. I think he has such a great journey ahead of him, and I can't wait to keep track of where he goes. I think some of the advice he gave is the best that I've had on over 140 episodes. To hear how he advises people to get into the industry, make their own work and get known, and honestly some of the best advice I've got. So thanks so much to Tharun for coming on the show, and hey, we joked at the end of the episode, but you're welcome whenever you want to come back on, and I can't wait to speak to you again. I hope you guys out there today have enjoyed the episode just as much as me. I love hearing from these up-and-coming directors, and it's so inspiring to listen to and always makes me want to create and do better for myself, and I hope it has that effect on you too. I'll be back in only a few days' time with another brand new episode. It's so busy and it's not going to quiet down anytime soon. All I ask in the meantime is to share these episodes. I'm seeing more and more people doing it every single week, and honestly, it makes a massive difference. Think of all your friends on your network that might not know about this podcast. If you share it on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, it's going to bring a new audience to the podcast, and that is something that money can't buy. It really is a case of word of mouth being the powerful tool out there, and it's free. So please keep that coming. It means the world to me. I do have a Patreon page set up. It's on markandme.com. On there you can sign up for as little as £1. I'm giving away the best prizes I can right now, some exclusive badges which I've had made just for patrons, and I've got some incredible stuff lined up for the near future. So if you can afford it, it's about £1 a month for the little subscription, and it makes a massive difference and helps me to keep the podcast going on all these amazing platforms and travel and get more and more interviews out there for you. I'll be back with a brand new episode very, very soon. So until then, look after yourself, take care, and I'll speak to you all soon.
of all the fruitless soldiers. Oh, I see the light and the heat. Oh, I wanna be that complete. I wanna touch the light, the heat I see in your eyes. I don't like to see so much pain, so much wasted, and this moment keeps slipping away. I get so tired working so hard for our survival. I look to the tide with you to keep me awake and alive. And all my instincts, they return, and the grand facade so soon will burn. Without a noise, without my pride, I reach out from the inside. In your eyes, your eyes, in your eyes, your eyes, the light, the heat, your eyes, I am complete, your eyes, I see the doorway, the thousand churches, your eyes, the resolution, your eyes, of all the